As a part of all of my presentations, I try to acknowledge that the land that we're standing on does not belong to us. This land rightfully belongs to the Piscataway people, and I am sure I'm not pronouncing that right. I hope there's somebody in the room that can help me correct that. So on this slide, we have a photo of the local tribal chairwoman, whose name is Natalie Proctor. And in order to ensure that we're not just saying, oh, we pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging, I plan to visit the museum tomorrow morning, and I invite other folks who are in town, or if you live here, to give some time, treasure, or attention to the local Indigenous nations. I also want to point out Living the American Indian Experience is a program that goes out to schools and other locations and teaches people about Native American arts and crafts and lifestyle and culture. And that top picture is them, looks like at an elementary school, working on some craft projects. Their mission is to be a resource of empowerment, preservation, and social change for Indigenous communities in the Chesapeake region. So I invite us all to think more about our Indigenous populations, and especially when it comes to reproductive justice and reproductive health. We all are very aware that people of color in general have worse outcomes, receive worse care, and the healthcare disparities are vast, and they're preventable. They're not intrinsic to not being a white person. And we see those disparities even greater for Indigenous people than for other folks of color. Just because the numbers are somewhat small in our country, I don't want us to forget about those folks. Indigenous women are 6 times more likely than white women to be arrested for a drug offense. And that compares to Hispanic women and Black women being twice as likely as white women to be arrested for a drug offense. So the disparities are massive for this population.
The next day, I found out that the Piscataway Museum had been closed, so instead my partner and I visited the Reginald F. Lewis Museum of Maryland African American History and Culture, which I highly recommend. Later that week, I was honored to be able to speak with Natalie Proctor on the phone, and that conversation was very difficult for me, but necessary. Natalie told me that in her youth, she had been trying to raise awareness of her people and their needs and existence, really, but she quit accepting invitations to events after going to event after event and never seeing any kind of change. The museum itself was only open for a few years before it had to close down, so now Natalie and other members of the Piscataway Nation participate in the Living the American Indian Experience program. They go to schools and other locations, like I said in my presentation. They also have a yearly invitation to present their program at Mount Vernon, which was George Washington's slave plantation. She said even though they feel really welcome and really grateful to be able to present their history, they've had to censor parts of it due to non-Indigenous people's discomfort with the ugly parts of our history. If they're not wearing feathers and leather fringe, they are invisible. And people don't want to see them moving into the future, but also paradoxically don't want to acknowledge their past. Natalie hopes to bring their story of their culture and their history to other colonized and war-torn people. Please consider making a donation at the piscatawayindians@gmail.com.